We're going to have a chat here about untrapping product teams. And it's all about simplifying what the others are complicating. I have been thinking, I've been part of this journey of product management and creating digital products for 15 years now. And after all of these years, if there's something I learned that no matter where you are involved in creating digital products, something is always the same. It will always be the same. And it's two words. This and the other. So expectations and reality, what happens? When I started my career in 2008, I was a software engineer. And I got a nickname. Didn't take that long, and it was Mr. Y. Because I expected to create great solutions, but I received requirements. I had no idea what they were for. And what I learned is this: expectations go one way, and reality the other way. And I want to give you 3 perspectives from just different angles. Then we can talk about untrapping product teams. So let's say you're hired as a product manager. That's what I have been doing for the last 10 years or so. Then I changed to head of products and so on. But someone once said that the product manager is the CEO of the product. I think Ben Horowitz said that around 20 years ago. And the first time I became a product manager, I was super excited about it. I thought, wow, I can define what can be built. It will be amazing. But then I faced something I call as the corporate firewall. And I realized that I was not really the CEO of the product. There's something called roadmaps. There's something called stakeholder expectations. And day in, day out, I had actually to fill the backlog. And without further notice, I was demoted to a backlog manager. I just didn't know that. But my main responsibility was to keep the backlog full and ensure that software engineers had enough to do. It was not that fun. And what happens with software engineers? Is it different? Well, they are hired to be the ones creating great solutions. Scalable, maintainable, things that change the game for the better. But what happens once they also hit the corporate firewall? What's going to happen is that creating solutions, they are going to have to cut the corners because there's too much to do. It's very hard. And then software engineers start, instead of creating great solutions, scalable, maintainable, success means delivering features at lightning speed. They are not software engineers anymore. They become coders. So they code. They follow requirements. They might not even know what that is about. Like when I started my career, I was Mr. Y. I had to ask questions. And I barely got answers. When I got some answers as a software engineer, they were, let's say, unconvincing, to say the least. Something like, because my boss wants. Because it's in the roadmap, we have to deliver that. Or the classic, sales promise that to a customer to close the deal. And I aimed to create scalable solutions, clean code. But then I realized that my code actually was anything but scalable. It was pretty stinky, actually. And what about product designers? Do you think it's different? They will also join the club. It's called the Frustrated People Club. They will all be part of that. But they also think they are hired to create outstanding user experience, intuitive design. Everyone can understand how to use it. But what is success for them? Success is creating design, high-fidelity ones that business stakeholders love. They approve that. They might not even be the ones using, probably, but they will approve. And designers will do that. Create high-fidelity prototypes that please stakeholders. And for the last 10 years, I have been thinking, am I the problem? Because I have been in different companies, from startups, enterprise, different countries, Brazil, Germany, different sectors, public sector. I've been also in the automobile, online e-commerce. And what I have been trying for a long, long time was, how do I avoid all of these traps? How do I change the game? And I try different. The thing is the following: there will be a lot of traps all over the place, either we like it or not. But the question is, how can we face these traps, overcome them, and create value? That's the real challenge. But to overcome the challenge, we need to understand how this game is. So let me try elaborating a little bit here on how a dynamic of a company is. If you are part of a bigger corporation, just imagine a unit of your organization. What all companies have is a lot of teams. There will be management defining where to go and so on, customer service to ensure that the customer's complaints are addressed, marketing to get the word out so that your product is known, also operations to ensure the business is running, and the product team. But this one is tricky, because the labels are different. Sometimes it's called the Scrum team, or maybe the tech team, or the development team, or whatever it is. But these guys here are the ones getting the job done. But if you look at all teams, what do they have in common? Any guess? All teams will have something in common, no matter where you work, all of them, including the product team. What is it? Any guess? Customer. Well, if they remember that, yes. What else? People. And people, they always have the most brilliant ideas in the world. At least all of them will think about it. And then where will these ideas go? To the beautiful product backlog. And this will grow and grow and grow. And these guys there, the product teams, they will have to exchange with everyone. And eventually, they get something out of the product backlog. That's generally what happens. So I'm being asked here. Is it better now? All right, sorry. So what happens then? The big question you have to deal with is, how do you handle this situation? That's what's going to happen. You may think it's different or not. So I'm going to give you 2 ways of handling this situation. Let's start with the one that doesn't work. That's probably the most common you're going to face. I call this one as the coordinative development flow. And how do you know you are working a coordinative development flow? You're going to face a lot of handovers. And also, when something goes wrong, you know who to blame. So Martin talked a lot in the morning about the plans. This one, you're going to have a plan. And the goal is to fulfill the plan. So how does it start? It will start the same, both coordinative, we are talking right now, and the collaborative, we're going to talk a little bit later. So you start with all the brilliant ideas together. But as this one is a coordinative one, you need to go to the prioritization committee. So you're going to talk to a lot of people and talk and talk and talk. And probably you're going to use frameworks to prioritize. You're going to use RICE, ICE. There's a new one I heard about. It's called MICE. I don't know the next one that's coming. But you're going to use one of these guys to find what? The most promising idea. And then you move this one to the design phase. And now it's the moment that the designer will create the high-fidelity prototype that business stakeholders are going to love it. And what is going to happen here? Once the design has the right tonality of blue and the buttons are rounded enough and stakeholders approve it, what do? You You do user testing. At this stage, big chance, you don't even know what that solution is for anymore. The goal is to deliver on what you put there, the high-fidelity prototype. And you're going to run user tests here. I've been part of that several times. But most probably, you have fallen in love with the solution. By this moment, the product manager and designer are highly involved. The software engineers are unaware of that. They have no idea what is awaiting for them. But what's going to happen here? You're going to confirm all of your bias. You're going to search for reason to prove yourself right. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to find all of these reasons. Because you're going to bias users. And then after this, you throw over the fence and you expect the software engineers to develop. Of course, they will do, like me, start asking why. They are not going to get the answers, but they will have to deliver. They will cut corners. Designers won't like it because the high-fidelity prototype is not going to be pixel perfect anymore the way it is implemented. And eventually, after putting all their blood and soul into this, they launch it. And it's live after months of work. What is the result now? Any idea? This is going to be the most beautiful piece of crap ever created. What happens next? Rinse and repeat. So what's going to happen next is very, let's say, I would say a little bit of madness. Because most probably, you go back to the prioritization committee and say, all right, this one didn't work. But there were different reasons. You know who to blame. You're going to find the one. It's not the process is fine. So you're going to find the next promising idea. And you go all over again. But the thing is, you're going to create a lot of useless features before you find the one that makes sense. When you work with a coordinative development flow, you're going to ask the question, how can we accelerate delivery? I wouldn't say that this question is useless, but I don't think this is the best one. There's something that we generally forget, that 9 out of 10 ideas will fail. You don't need to take my word on that. If you want, just Google what happens to startups after 5 years. All the startups created now, big chance that 90% of them in 5 years will evaporate. They won't exist. If you look at the experiments, Itamar Gilad wrote the book Evidence Guided, and there are some studies there. Netflix success rate is 8%, less than that. Google is somewhere on the 12%. But somehow, corporations forget about this. Corporations forget that the ideas are fragile. And in the beginning, they suck. So, you need to make that suck less. And there's a better question to ask. This one. Instead of asking, how can we accelerate delivery? What about finding the losers faster? And then we drop them. Then we don't waste our time on the losers. Then we can double down on the winners. That's a better question to ask. But generally, this question is forgotten. I don't know why. I think Martin knows. He wrote in his book quite well. We love plans. We love that. So we want to create a speculation to give us confidence. We're right. Why? We want to remain in control. And this, we are just going to drop what we know is not going to work. But we were talking about traps. I'm talking now about the collaborative, the coordinative development flow. And there's something that's going to get in the way. And it's an art. I want to present it to you. I call as bullshit management. For a while, I was trying to think if I was doing product management or something else. I said, am I really doing product management? It doesn't seem like that. And I couldn't find a name to what I was doing. And then I came up with this name. I call it as bullshit management. And what is that? I was saying it is an art. Bullshit management is the art of spending time doing things that brings no value, but drain your energy. And there's an equation behind it. It's very simple. The more bullshit you handle, the less value you create. So we need to recognize the aspects of bullshit management. And I want to share that with you. Because you cannot escape from that. You need to deal with it mindfully. And whether you like it or not, it's all over the place. And today, I want to give you 4 examples that you are probably doing like I used to do, doing bullshit management instead of product management. Let's start with this one. Picture yourself going to a restaurant. You walk there, you sit, the waiter comes to you and asks, what would you like to eat? And then you say, well, I'd like the chef's burger, but you know, I don't like pickles. Just remove it, please. Then the waiter takes note. Do you want maybe a side thing? We have also the chef's French fries. We also have sweet potatoes. And say, yeah, I would go with sweet potatoes. And anything to drink? I say, yeah, maybe a Coke, a small one. The waiter takes notes, walks to the kitchen, pow, hangs on the wall, and if you're lucky, you are going to get the burger without the pickles. If I picture myself, 2012, when I first landed my job as a product manager, back then the name was product owner when I signed that, I didn't know the difference. There's no difference. Another conversation. But what I was doing, I would walk to stakeholders and say, what are the requirements of the solution? I would write it down, and I would say, maybe you could do something on top of that. Maybe you could do this. And then I would write backlog items, Jira tickets, and then eventually they would make to a sprint without the goal. And we would hope for the best. What did I miss there? The waiter didn't care if the person had high cholesterol, or maybe the person was diabetic. The waiter couldn't care less about it. The waiter was just, okay, you want a burger? I'm going to give you the burger. I don't care what that makes from you. The same did I with the stakeholders. I didn't care if the wants from business stakeholders matched the needs of customers. The hard way, I learned that they often don't. So when you behave like this, it's going to go wrong. Another example is the consensus. When I moved to Germany, I got quite shocked that everything was slow, and they told me that you must reach consensus. They said the consensus is the best way to get everyone in. And for me, it's actually the worst possible way. But it's the best way to get the worst option for the product. It's slow, and everyone has to weigh in, and you get an option that was not even on the table. Let me help you understand that scenario. Some friends of mine were getting married. And I was ready. It took me around 5 minutes to get ready. My wife took a little bit longer. She was preparing the makeup. She was wearing a beautiful, gorgeous blue dress. And she looked at me and asked one question. Should I wear high heels or flat shoes? For a moment I thought, I know she doesn't care about the answer. but I will try. What's the difference? She said, well, the difference, like high heels, fancy, you know? And flat shoes, well, they're okay, but they're more comfortable. I said, what's most important for you? Said, think comfort. Said, there you go. You have your answer. Said, yeah, but fancy would be cool. Said, I got you. What about fancy and comfortable? You walk on one like this, and then you go like that in the picture. It will be fancy and comfortable. She looked at me, that's nonsense. I said, yeah, that's nonsense. What happens with product? A UX designer will go and talk to customers. We'll run a lot of user tests. And we understand what clicks with them and what doesn't. And then the UX designer presents the result to business stakeholders. Somehow they deny reality. And they start giving their opinions, saying, hey, maybe we put that, maybe we put this. Software engineer will do the same, and so on and so on. Then out of the blue, you have, another solution that is fancy and comfortable. And then that's the option you take it. Everyone gave their opinion, everyone has consensus. Let's move on. The best way is to let expertise talk louder than opinion. And also evidence should always talk louder than that. But somehow we like doing things a bit different. So, an example of bullshit management. Now let's talk about the tricky one. I have a question for you. And you need to be honest. Raise your hands if you say more times yes than no. I doubt this answer. I think you're a little bit shy. I do that, I also do. So the problem of saying yes and no, I like the explanation from James Clear, author of The Atomic Habits. Every yes you give is a responsibility you take, while no is a decision to remain focused. I learned that when my product backlog was like a wish log. I would look at that, I would not understand a thing about it. I said, probably I'm saying too many times yes. It was very hard to manage expectations from the stakeholders, didn't know how to work with that. So I had a plan, simple one. Every time a stakeholder comes to me, I'm going to say no 3 times without any explanation. Said, if they bother to come the 4th time, I will listen. It worked. My backlog shrunk. But my boss got quite annoyed because I got another nickname back then, the business blocker. So I went from Mr. Wine to the business blocker because I was saying too many no's. But then I recognized that my strategy was flawed. Very simple. I lacked empathy. I just said no, bluntly. No, no, no. What do you mean? Next time. But then I had another strategy. It's better to help stakeholders say no to themselves. But for that, you need to do your homework. So I would do the following. Stakeholders would come to me and say, hey, I have this brilliant idea here. I said, tell me more about it. Then they would say, help me understand how this helps us get closer to our vision. It doesn't. So how can I justify doing that right now? It's a distraction. Yeah, you're right. Let's not do it. Would walk away. Somebody else would say, it makes sense to our vision because of this. Say, looking at our quarterly goals, how would that help us right now? It doesn't. Say, okay. They would walk away. And sometimes someone would come with an idea that related to what mattered most at that moment. Let's say now, let's put in the backlog. If it didn't, I would not put in the backlog and say, later we do it. Because, some people think that product backlog, you just put there in the bottom and it's fine. But my saying is the following. Don't increase the size of the product backlog. Increase the size of your trash bin. It's your friend. When you failed, which question do you ask? This is a very important question, because if you ask a question, what are you going to do to avoid this failure next time? You're going to kill creativity. Someone is going to change the process to ensure no more failure is going to happen. But if you have asked the question, what did you learn from it? Then you have better chance of succeeding. When I moved to Germany, I realized that failure was a big taboo. I started interviewing people, and I would ask them some questions like, could you share with me a story where you failed and how you contributed to that? And some people would tell me, well, here we don't really talk about these things. I say, why not? Well, it's not a good thing. We should not fail. But there was one place in Germany that the founders noticed that, and they decided to change it. The founder said, we're going to have an event here, and it's called the Fuck Up Night. And during the Fuck Up Night, we are going to share how we fuck it up. And then the event had DJ, drinks, some food. I remember, as if it was today, the founder going in front of everyone, 300 employees, and say, the reason I am here today is because I took 3 startups, not 1, not 2, but 3, to bankruptcy. And he said, what I learned is the following. No matter how you start a startup, your idea is wrong. So you need to find where you're going to pivot as fast as possible. The first one, I didn't pivot, so that's why I'm here. The second one is about revenue. If customers say, I would use that, don't believe them. Get their money before. Because if they start paying, it means that they would use it. And then he said, the hard thing about a company is that some people will be a misfit. So you need to make it easier for them to go and find the right people to contribute to the mission. And he said, I failed to give enough context. So I made bad hires with wrong expectations, and now I'm here to ensure that everyone has the right context. And I remember this honesty after that. A product manager said, I'm going to share how I removed 50,000 products last week from our website. So, ooh, that's brave. We had only 55,000, and the product manager removed almost everything. But we learned, and the collaboration improved. So, just remembering here, what are the traps? I put 7 here, it was a mistake. Oops, that was too fast. So remember, keep in mind the waiter, the burger, and then you have consensus. Just picture that, fancy and comfortable. And you also have the fear of saying no and the failure. And the question is, if you know all of this, how do you defeat that? Now let's talk about overcoming bullshit management. I start telling you, beginning here, about the coordinative development flow. I hope that you're not doing that. And if you are, let's change it. Let's move away from this thing of going all in one idea and think how we could collaborate better. When you think about the collaborative development flow, in the beginning, it will be just the same. No change. You have all the brilliant ideas in the world. I'm not talking here how the ideas arrive there. But you are going to have many ideas going in your direction. What if you do differently? You take a pragmatic approach. Instead of trying to find the winner, you just say, let's take all of them together, all of them. And if we did our homework, maybe we ask some questions. How does this contribute to our vision? How does this support our strategy? How does this enable our most pressuring goal right now? It doesn't. So you realize that you do this exercise and you can remove many things in the beginning. And then the others, you say, seem quite promising. Let's go all in now. No, not that fast. What about learning? Here, you're going to spend a few days. The past one, just a few hours, not more than that. And here, say, how do we know this idea is desirable? I'll give you an example. At some point, I decided that I would create a course about product discovery. So how do I know that is desirable? The first thing I did was to create a survey and see how people would react to that. And I realized that my first value proposition didn't speak to anyone, so I dropped. Not desirable. And then you look at the other idea. How is it feasible? Can you do it? You say, no, we cannot do it. We lack the technology, for example. Can you collect the value for the business in that case? Maybe you don't have an answer for that. Run it. So then the others, you say, yeah, they are desirable, feasible, and viable. What about doing some other experiments? These experiments you take more serious. These are going to take maybe a few days to a few weeks. Continue on my example of product discovery. I wanted to see if people are really serious about it. Connecting to the example of the founder who didn't collect revenue, I said, I'm not going to create any course directly. What I'm going to do, I will put a landing page and, something happened. I will put a landing page there and see if people are willing to pay for that. Turned out that people won't. And then I change, and then people start subscribing. I said, this is the course I'm going to create. But what people subscribed for didn't exist. I had to create after. But after I got the evidence, people were willing to do that. Then I launched it. So after I had enough people to attend the first cohort, my minimum number was 10, then I created. The same you can do with product. But in this case, you see the difference? You finish that by dropping the bad ideas on the way. Some ideas will take longer for you to realize they are bad. But you realize that on the way. And the difference here is that your approach is not to accelerate delivery. It's just to separate the bad from the good. The bad you put inside of the trash bin, you make it bigger. And the good you invest in that. It's not that complicated. I just think we made it complicated. And when you do it right, product discovery will help you create value faster. But as I said, you need to do your homework. And that's not an easy task. But I want to simplify that for you. Because I'm not very good dealing with complexity. I think my brain is quite small, so I try simplifying everything, because I don't understand the other things. So let's talk about the right ingredients. I'm going to give you 3 health checks. I do that with any team I consult, with any comp I start. So I like evaluating some things. Overall product management, the classic. But there are some quality aspects you need to look. How is your product vision? It's not about having a product vision that is written on the wall. If that is just written on the wall and nobody uses it, then it's absent or irrelevant. But if you have a product vision that you use during your strategic planning, use that during your roadmap, you look at your product, your sprint reviews, and you say, this is how our sprint increment is collaborating to the vision. If you're doing this, then yes, then it makes sense. What about your strategy? Product strategy, when it's done right, is going to simplify decision making. We know who you serve. You also know who you don't serve. And you know what success looks like. What about objectives? Do you know where you're going? Do you know where you're not going? How do you make decisions? Do teams have clear principles? I can tell you, if teams lack principle, they will always discuss in circles. I worked in many places that we had, like, for example, buyers and sellers. And there are moments that you need to prioritize. Who comes first, buyers or sellers? It's a principle. You can say, for example, buyers even over sellers. Another example, how do you build things? Do you build first to learn and then to scale? Or do you do it right from the beginning? And how is your business model? It's funny for me sometimes that product teams are clueless about their business model. And I wonder, how can you create products if you don't know how the dynamics of the business work? Because your job is not to create features. It's to deliver value for customers and to collect value in exchange for that. So this is the first health check I want to give it to you. I call it the product management health check. And then we have the discovery health check. Do you understand how the value exchange happens between what you have and what the customers? For example, customer pains, gains, and tests. If you don't understand that, it's going to be tricky to make decisions. How often do you interview customers? But it's not only about interviewing, it's about getting insights from the interviews. How do you identify assumptions? And this is a very tricky one, because assumptions are the mother of all fuck-ups. And identifying is not enough. You need to prioritize them and test. And I said prioritize and test because you're not going to go wild and test all assumptions. You need to test the critical ones. The ones that if they are proven wrong, your idea is useless. And you lack evidence for that. So these are the ones to test. And then you come up with solutions. But I imagine you are looking at me and say, hey, I lack all of this. I have no idea where to start. And I cannot come up with a product strategy and a vision right now because I'm not empowered to do it. So I get you. Kind of been there, done that, and I have several t-shirts written that. Assumptions is where you can start. You don't need to ask for permission to do that. You can if you are working in a feature roadmap, you can just look at the roadmap and say, what are we assuming here? Maybe you're assuming that customers will understand how to use it. Maybe you're assuming that it creates value. Maybe you're assuming this and that. Then what you can do is test the assumptions. Because this is what I say. You need to understand the cards you have in the game and make the best move possible. Because once you do that, you can win the cards you lack. But it's about taking the hero's position and not the victim of circumstance. The last health check. The delivery health check. I mentioned this one. How do you implement solutions? Do you build it right from the beginning? If there are software engineers here, please don't kill me. But my favorite thing is to create technical debt in the beginning. Why? Because I like hacking a solution to accelerate learning. And then, if I realize the solution creates no value, let's just get rid of it and not spend any more time. But if you start building it right from the beginning, it means you may throw good code away. You don't want to do that. You want to invest in the solutions that you have evidence that justify making it scalable. And not all of them will. So first, build to learn. Then, to scale. How do you measure results? This is a tricky one. Because the ideal world, you finish your sprint, and then you have results to measure. The real world, it will take some time. So you are working, and then you are collecting results. And then you need to be brave to do something. Removing the features that create no value. Because nowadays, I tend to think that companies perceive great products as the products, where you're having nothing else to add, I would say that's a cluttered product. A great product is the one you have nothing else to remove. And how do you deal with failure? It's just a step towards success. And the last one is a product backlog. You don't want to be a backlog manager, as I was in the beginning of my career. You want to move away from that. The backlog is just part of the job, not the whole job in itself. So, to wrap up this talk here, all that you need to do is to encourage teams to step back, look at your scenario, recognize the traps you have, and challenge the status quo. One thing at a time. And I would have one last question for you. Because you always have a choice, always. And you need to choose which one you're going to make. You can, indeed, bow to the status quo. You say, it is what it is, cannot change. Then you accept that that's it. Or you can challenge the status quo, and you would have a chance of a better tomorrow. You do something small today for a better tomorrow. I don't promise you it's going to work. It's going to be a little bit stressful. Not everyone's going to support you. But you have a better chance. So what's your choice? Thank you. So you can find more about me in my newsletter, Untrapping Product Teams. And I mentioned about the cohort, product discovery. And I want to offer you, if you want to join the cohort, I'm starting a new one, November 18th. And for those joining, there's a voucher for you there, 15% discount. So yeah, that's about it.
OK, so do we have any questions? Yes?
Hi, David. So I know you a little bit, and I know you're unafraid of challenging the status quo. So maybe there are other people out there who are afraid of challenging the status quo. So what has helped for you to not be afraid, to be a bit of a rebel that you are? And maybe you can share some tips, because I think not everybody is like you, and maybe you had a certain journey to get where you are. So yeah, that's my question.
Cool. Yeah. It is about helping the others seeing what you are seeing. So I have been part of many roadmaps where you had the situation, all the features and so on. And what I like doing is, let's make a report of the features created over the 6 to 12 months and see how often are they used. And then you share the results with the others and say, this is what I learned. All the features we created, 50% of them are forgotten. And the others, we actually cannot connect to value created. And you ask the question, is that the way we are supposed to work? Or maybe we could explore together something different. So it's helping the others see something you are seeing, and then you can move on.
Thank you.
Hi, David. So I also have a question for you. I really like all the insights you present, all these ideas. But they all form a very fundamental change for a company. Sorry. Very fundamental change for a company. How do you go achieve this? What would be an approach, an effective approach?
The rebel approach in this case generally doesn't work. So I will tell you what doesn't work. If you try shouting and say, that's not how we should be working differently and so on, and bombarding companies with jargons, that's not going to work. What works is meeting them where they are, but one step ahead, extend the hand and move on. For example, the roadmap, feature roadmap. They will be unwilling to work outcome-oriented, but you tell them, what if we give it a try for 2 quarters, one team out of 5, 20%, doing different. And then we compare the results, and we see how it goes. Because management will be unwilling to try something totally different without a little bit of evidence that it works. So make the first step smaller. But that means you need to compromise. So you need to be willing to go through some output-oriented roadmap so you can prove them that the other way can work. This way is how I would recommend doing.
Thank you.